I spent my 40th birthday this year recovering from pneumonia, which wasn't the grand celebration I had planned. Instead of visiting the Gold Coast and catching up with friends, I was more feeling defeated, and I even scrapped my 40th birthday video I was hoping to make and spent my weekend in bed playing Paper Mario. Despite my best intentions to be miserable, I found myself smiling while playing the Thousand-Year Door. Sure, the bright and colourful world and perhaps the witty and humorous dialogue played a big part in lifting my spirits, but I also think there's something a little bit special about Nintendo's legacy that also contributed. It got me thinking about the past 40 years on this planet and how influential Nintendo was to me as a brand growing up. So let's take a look at some of the franchises I grew up on and how they've evolved in the past 40 years, as well as some memories that I have throughout this time. I would like to thank Thomas Deichmann2264 and Honest Grifter for their suggestions on my 40th birthday video. Before we begin, I know regular readers and viewers may wonder, how am I going to fill in the gaps in the past due to my memory loss? While I've revisited a lot of these classics since my brain injury, I also asked my wife and parents a lot of questions in the past few days to fill in a lot of the blanks. I hope you enjoy this story, and I hope you can share some of your favourite Nintendo memories too. My first introduction to both Nintendo and gaming was Christmas in 1989. My parents purchased a NES system with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and my brother and I would take turns trying to beat the game. For those of you who know the game, you can imagine we'd most likely never beat the damn stage. Then I was introduced to a character called Mario in the Super Mario Bros. Game, and I was instantly hooked, battling my way to find out if indeed the princess was in my next castle. Alas, I don't think I ever did, and I would later beat the Mario Bros. On the 3DS during my recovery phase, thanks to the Nintendo Ambassador Program and generous restore points. I did dabble in The Legend of Zelda and had the gold cartridge, which was heralded as a trophy, but I didn't really get hooked on that series until much later on, which may sound sacrilegious, but I think I was just a bit too young. I played Mario Bros. 3, which I was obsessed with, and I felt it was leaps and bounds ahead of its predecessor in terms of graphics, gameplay, and style. I also played a lot of Battletoads, Double Dragon 2, and Punch-Out! And in Australia, I'm pretty sure it was called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, featuring Mario as the ref, but I've noticed the recent versions don't have the Mike Tyson moniker on it, but I do clearly remember getting destroyed by Iron Mike. The NES carried me through long after the Super Nintendo launched because we couldn't really afford a SNES, so I spent a lot of time playing the classics right up until the Nintendo 64 came out. It never really bothered me as most of these games were, and still are, timeless. I still regularly play these on the NSO app. Perhaps a part of me is chasing those memories I lost, or perhaps there's something in my brain that finds comfort there. Who knows? The Nintendo 64 launched when I was in high school, and to me this is the golden age of gaming. I was friends with a German exchange student called Stefan who wasn't fitting in much, and we would hang out on weekends and play N64 games. I could not believe it when my parents brought one home for me alongside GoldenEye, perhaps one of the greatest games ever made, and I invited a couple of my mates over, including Stefan, who brought his controls over so we could play 4-player deathmatch. From that moment on, Stefan stopped being the weird foreign exchange kid to my friends and became the legend who dominated the facility with remote minds. The N64 era for me was filled with moments like that, mates just coming together to game. It didn't really matter if we were duking it out on Mario Party or Mario Kart or 1080 snowboarding. All that mattered is we were gaming together. One of my closest friends that was by my side for this era still occasionally hangs out and plays games with me too. Mario 64 in particular for me revolutionized 3D platforming by using analog controls, and it paved the way for 3D platformers moving forward. Sure, the PS1 had Crash, who so gallantly sat outside Nintendo and Sega headquarters, taunting them that PlayStation was the place to be. How the mighty have fallen, Crash. I jest, of course, since Crash was fantastic in his own right, but Mario super jumped so that our other heroes could run into our living rooms and our hearts. I feel like nothing really rivaled Mario 64 until a bear came along with a bird in his backpack, and that did take a bit of attention away from Mario. Ocarina of Time eventually came out, and despite not really getting into the series earlier, I was completely absorbed in this world. My brother told me that I called the school pretending to be my dad, saying I had chickenpox so I could take 2 weeks off to play it. I don't remember this, but I'm still hooked on Ocarina of Time, so there may be truth to it. My best mate also told me that we used to have a code phrase when we were going to skip school to play Nintendo. One of us would call and say, "The sun is shining," and if the other party was down to game, they would reply, "But the ice is still slippery." I don't recommend doing it yourself if you're in school watching this video, because remember, video games are important, but education is importanter. I also actually met my wife during this era of gaming. She moved next door to me and we started playing handball on the street. One day she asked me if I wanted to play Perfect Dark with her on her N64, and I decided right then and there I would marry her. 24 years later, we have 2 wonderful kids and who also share our love for Nintendo and gaming. GameCube and Game Boy Advance brought me wonderful gaming titles like Rogue Leader, Sonic Adventure 2, Mario Sunshine, and Golden Sun. My wife told me about how I had to choose between Advance Wars and Golden Sun at EB Games, and she suggested I try Golden Sun, and I would play this for hours alongside my mate while he played Final Fantasy on his PlayStation. It also gave my mates and I a chance to belt the crap out of each other with Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Kart Double Dash, and F-Zero GX. I actually have a very fond memory of my wife when we got our first place together. I was working in a bar and I came home in the early hours of the morning to find my wife sailing across the ocean in Wind Waker, which would have to be my second favourite title in all the Zelda series. She had stocked up on snacks for me to enjoy the game on my next day off, and she thought she'd give it a go as well. This era of gaming was also my first introduction to Samus in Metroid Prime and the Animal Crossing series, 2 franchises that have stuck with me ever since. I had a DS during my time in the military, and while my memories at that period are very hazy, I do recall taking a taxi into town on my weekend leave to grab a copy of Animal Crossing. While I'm sure most of my fellow flight were playing God of War and Monster Hunter on PSP, I rather enjoyed losing myself to lazily fishing on the river and liked how Mr. Rossetti screaming at me for not saving reminded me of my MSIs at the time. And then I got sick. The 3DS dropped during the Wii and Wii U era and played a huge part in my recovery from my stroke. While I did have both a Wii and Wii U, I only really remember playing the Wind Waker remake and Skyward Sword. The 3DS played an instrumental role in helping me train my hands, as I'd have a lot of trouble making quick moves. I tended to stick to turn-based games like Pokemon and Fire Emblem, and I had a limited edition 3DS which I treasured. Once, due to my hand function, I dropped it on the ground in the water and was devastated, almost like a child dropping ice cream on the pavement, because this was my comfort zone, and my wife knew how upset I was, and we were travelling at the time, so she helped me make a 3-hour detour to EB Games in Cowra to get a replacement Zelda 3DS. Nintendo then helped transfer my ambassador status to the new console by using serial numbers of the old one. Eventually, I made a mostly full recovery and was well back into gaming by the time the Switch landed. And if you've been following me for a bit, you'll know how this era of gaming is going. I remember picking up my Switch with Breath of the Wild and an offensive amount of amiibos with it. As a Switch gamer, I've been lucky to experience a lot of games I forgot with the remakes and NSO content. I still jump on Double Dragon 2, play nearly all of the full N64 back catalogue, and have now caught up on Mario RPG, Paper Mario, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting Luigi's Mansion 2. It's also the console that helped me launch What's It Like, because one day I just woke up and decided I never wanted to ask myself, what if? And I've been extremely fortunate to develop working relationships with wonderful teams like Calypso Media, Bethesda, and Nintendo themselves. And I've also been really lucky to have such a wonderful community behind me who share this interest in gaming. I think it's just Nintendo that brings us all together. All of this loops back to now as I still recover from pneumonia while playing Paper Mario, thinking about all the wonderful memories that I've had in gaming in my 40 years of being on this planet. I'm very excited to see what's next with the Switch successor and how technology will change when my kids are my age. I'm certain Nintendo will be a part of their lives as they grow up, and maybe they'll reflect on that one time that Granddad had a gaming channel on YouTube to their kids long after I'm gone. Until then, I'm just going to hold on to my gaming memories that I have, whether they're fractured and fragmented old ones lost to time and fate, or wonderful new ones, and how Nintendo still brings out that big kid in me with their signature magic. That special something that they sprinkle into most of their games they make and have been there since 1989 when my parents handed my brother and I our first gaming console. Games have certainly changed in the past 40 years I've been alive. But reflecting on it, it's clear that Nintendo has always had that something special that makes playing their games a joy. Thank you for walking down memory lane with me on my 40th birthday. Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. The best way you can support me is to like and subscribe and continue watching my content if you enjoy it. But if you do want to go that bit extra, you can buy me a coffee or join our Patreon, which shows you behind the scenes of this channel. Thanks again.